Alright, YouTube, it's time for the Occult video 74, Thought Forms, Egregores, you can throw in Servitors, and so forth. This is an important concept that is tied in with memetics. With memetics, what generally in contemporary society is occurring is someone wants to push a message, whether it's organic or whether they're trying to manipulate people, make a funny picture associated with it, usually something for the low attention crowd, put it online, and hope it goes viral. Oftentimes they'll shill it in order for it to go viral. I don't do that, but I know, like, Correct the Record working with Hillary Clinton does. Trump's people do it. Let's face it, it's not all organic there. Political parties are most guilty of this. Religious groups are probably a close second. Then sort of social movements in general, they do the same thing. With the concept of thought forms and egregores as they relate to the occult, though, typically you do not have a particularly large community unleashing them upon the world. It can be as small as a very small number of people, 2 or 3 people, that are sort of creating a collective conscious, and they're ruminating on it. I would say, in my mystic practice, the concept of selectively and willfully obsessing over something really helps with the growth of a thought form. That is, for instance, you can manipulate others' perception of you by manipulating your own perception of yourself, because your actions begin to reflect the obsession, the psychological, not involuntary obsession, as in, well, I'm delusional. Now, voluntary obsession, as in you repeatedly choose consciously to observe yourself in a light that is something other than what you have currently achieved. For instance, somebody who is not successful may drive their ambition into overdrive by focusing on their strongest aspects and saying, well, I'm going to be even stronger, and reminding themselves of this. Even like when they're daydreaming or when they're about to go to sleep at night, they just sort of visualize themselves as what they want to be, and it sparks an out-of-control obsession in the person. This is one of the prime tenets of the version of Satanism that I followed when I was a Satanist. The idea that you can destroy guilt and fear and unleash your full potential, and the only thing stopping you, standing in your way of doing so, is self-doubt for the most part. If you have self-doubt, it becomes very difficult to remove guilt. It becomes even more difficult to remove fear, because that fear often is a source of doubt in oneself. Whether you're perceiving yourself in the manner of a thought form as a god, as a deified persona, or whether it's just you want to be stronger in some aspect of your life, you want to do better, you are tired of being held back, and you want your ambition to thrive. One of the things that this has helped me with most is my literature. For instance, a couple of years ago, I was very despondent because, of course, I had worked on a few texts, nothing particularly significant. One of several times, the plans fell through to release these texts, and I thought, well, I wouldn't be any good. I can't understand what editing is all about. I could never do this. Probably nobody will ever read my work. If they do, I'm not getting anything out of it other than, lukewarm applause, because I'm just sort of, I'll put it online. People can read it. Some people get a kick out of it, say it's great. Most people will be like, oh, what? And most people in the world will never know that I even exist fundamentally in a literary capacity. What I did, though, was I chose to begin increasing my ambition psychologically. I did this willfully. I didn't do it, spur of the moment. I just started visualizing myself as a wizard or something, and then my actions followed my thoughts about myself. Your thoughts control you. You are simply a collection of your thoughts. In the most literal and pure sense, the world you see around you is just a visualization from your brain. That's all it is. It's your specific perception of the world. That's really all you're ever seeing. You will never see the world through another person's perspective. You see your own, so you can affect your perspective of what you're seeing around you, and you react differently. There's a big difference in a person's behavior between somebody who is depressed, they're riddled with doubt, they're riddled with guilt and fear, the way they carry themselves, the way they speak, the ambition level that they're capable of attaining, and thus, generally speaking, not always, but generally, the end result of their actions, of their attitude, is vastly different. It is a world removed for somebody who has convinced themselves that there is some cosmic importance in their life, even if they keep it in the back of their head that it's all psychodrama, that it's ultimately meaningless. It still affects them. They can't help it. It's become an obsession for them. Then it drives their ambition, and once it begins driving that ambition, once that ambition starts burning in them like a fire, they no longer even need the thought form anymore. They've awakened themselves. They've given themselves their true potential. This is the secret to all power. It's the secret to every level of power that's ever been achieved, to manipulate reality. The reality that most people believe in mind-numbingly. They're like sheep. They don't question anything. They look at the world around them. They never question why it works the way that it works. They may say, well, this law's dumb. This law's retarded. But did they ever stop and think for a moment, what if the entire legal system itself is just complete artifice? It's based on a subjective understanding of reality that has simply been agreed upon by a majority of people within any given culture they happen to inhabit as being the one true objective way to live your life. The same is true of morality and philosophy in general. When people say, oh, well, this philosopher disagrees with you, I'm sure that if I read enough about philosophy, I can find those that agree with me as well. It's all subjective. There's no objective truth. All it is a bunch of questions. We could be living in an AI system right now. So the way to unleash your full potential, generally speaking, now it can be difficult for some people. Some people have more of a problem with their mentality to begin with. Some people have more of an innate ambition, an innate drive, an innate ego, you could call it. Feeding your ego is no bad thing. I would say there's positive ways to do it, and then there's negative ways to do it. Certainly, simply puffing yourself up without having achieved anything, probably not the way to go, as long as you actually want some level of success. It's not going to work very well. But actually attempting to achieve, even if you fail 99 times before you succeed once, is far preferable. I know that firsthand. Failure after failure plagued everything that I wanted to do, until I realized, hey, no, I could do whatever the fuck I want. Why should I listen to other people's opinion about my capabilities? I only listen to my own now. And what I did was I simply affected my perception of self, and this changed my behavior. And everything now, for the most part, is hunky-dory. Things are surging right ahead. I've got much more drive. I've got much more energy. I've got much more ambition. All I had to do was manipulate my own self-perception. When people talk about charisma, they talk about manipulation and propaganda and stuff. They often externalize it. They say, well, this is how you get somebody else to think a certain way, to do a certain thing. The most effective way, though, is to affect oneself. You also can become numb to external provocations from any form of propaganda. You can start ignoring it completely. From any form of manipulation, advertisements and so forth, political speeches, all that nonsense, and you can begin to analyze it from a mental level that is higher than that capable of being attained by most people that get paid to do such things. It's very simple. Astonishingly simple. Before I started ruminating on these things, I always thought, well, in order to be like master speaker, master analyzer of anything, you have to be a genius, you have to have a PhD. No, you don't. Really, no. Honestly, you don't. You simply have to have a clear mind. The problem is, most people that live in this world, regardless of their culture, their religion, or whatever, their minds are clouded. They've been told what to believe. They've been forced to memorize things all their life. Our public education system, by the way, doesn't help this. If they would simply manipulate themselves into being the cosmic rebels they were meant to be, they wouldn't have this problem. And the world would be a much better place, generally speaking. The collective consciousness of society would be so much greater than it is now as a result of such a transformation, that we would be living not in a utopian world. There will always be problems. There'll always be disease. Changing your self-image doesn't give you the gift of being able to cure AIDS or something like that, or cure your cancer. I don't care how much positive thinking you think you have. It's not going to work. No, that's not reality. It can certainly help with some of the symptoms, but it's not going to cure the underlying disease that you're suffering with. It doesn't cure every struggle. It doesn't cure every war. It doesn't mean that we get together, we all sing Kumbaya as one people and smoke a bowl and go home and the war ends. That's not what it's about. It's about self. You have to change the self. If everyone focused on that first and unleashed their true potential, this world would be far ahead of where it is now. As far as the concept of servitors and egregores, that is, sentient or partially sentient or sort of mechanical energy and thought forms that have been created to do certain tasks. I see it as a psychological extension of the thought form as applied to simply self-perception to begin with. That is, a group of people have performed this, they've externalized the same basic concept. Ultimately, though, the ones that are being affected are the people actually practicing it. They've created it together as a group, or a person has done it on their own. They've affected the way that they think. If they believe in such a thing, that is a further effect. Whether they do or not, it's still going to affect their actions. And then they see the fruits of their labor over time emerge because their behavior is now different. Even if they don't recognize it, the way they behave is not the same as the way they behaved before. The way they think, the manner of thought itself on a deeper level than just, well, what am I thinking about now? Am I thinking about the vanilla ice cream or the chocolate ice cream? I'm talking about the actual thought process on a deeper level is significantly impacted when a person is regularly performing occult rituals. Now, this also happens with mainstream religions too. You go to church and pray, it changes your state of mind. It does. Anything that you take part in changes your state of mind. When you read, it changes your state of mind. When you watch TV, it generally numbs down your state of mind, but it's a change that it undergoes. When you're communicating with other people, any interpersonal reaction, any time that data is being transferred or received by your brain and processed, it is changing your perception of reality. Have you ever had, for instance, a moment where you're reading a book and you get so absorbed into the book that you feel like you're in it? All of a sudden, you're no longer really consciously reading the pages. You're keeping up. You are subconsciously doing that. Your eyes are going across the page and you're inputting that data, but your mind's in the book itself. You have just completely changed. You're almost experiencing a hallucination when you really think about it. You're actually in the story on some level. You're no longer paying attention to the physical book in front of you. You're paying attention to the mental book playing in your mind. The descriptions of the characters will never do that sort of visualization a justice, by the way. It's much more entertaining. For those that have a highly visual brain, reading is even more stimulating than for the general population. I love it. I especially like my favorite book, by the way, somebody asked me this, Elfin Ship by James Blaylock. Get a copy, trust me. Or any of the Elfin Ship trilogy. There's also The Disappearing Dwarf and The Stone Giant. All three of them are amazing. Just trust me on this one. If you like steampunk at all, you'll love these sort of fantasy, a little bit sword and sorcery and a little bit steampunk sort of meshed together. Very visual novels, very good for people with visual minds, extremely well written, little bit of the dry, sarcastic humor in it too. Slightly similar, a little less morbid, but slightly similar to the sort of humor I tend to crack. But yes, that's a change of your mind too. When you're reading something, when you're doing something, certainly an occult ritual that's more, transformative in nature. Any of these things change your state of mind. It changes the way you operate completely. And because your behavior has changed, it's like the concept, the one thing I agree with the Christians on perhaps, garbage in, garbage out. If you fill yourself with nonstop doubt, now what they call garbage, I wouldn't. I wouldn't call Harry Potter garbage. I'd call their brand of self-doubt and guilt to be the real garbage. You put that in your mind, it begins weighing you down, and you feel that way constantly. It drains your capabilities. It relegates ambition to the evil and says your ego is a bad thing. You should be praying to Jesus for everything that happens. The same is true within Judaism, Islam, and other religious groups as well. Even some of the more wise Eastern religions, they talk about clearing your mind. But what are you replacing it with? Are you replacing it with something that's truly positive or just more subjective material that happens to be less violent and less intolerant than what you'd get from Abrahamism? I say the former. It's useless material largely. Some of their mythologies are very good. The practice of meditation, it's very good for you. Very good to meditate. It's good to keep in mind. Be at peace with nature. Don't, harm the animals for no reason. Those are good things. Don't go around picking fights and being a shitfuck. But at the same time, beyond that sort of core moral message, a lot of it's just more superstition, honestly. And I don't mean superstition in the spiritual sense. I mean it in the organized religious sense. I have to keep those two separate. So yes, thought forms are extremely important. If you want to become more ambitious, lead yourself down a path, just remember a few things. If you build it, they will come is probably the wisest thing ever said by mankind. That's number one. And if you want something done right, do it yourself. Always do it yourself. You have to transform yourself. You can't look at some transcendentalist literature and read somebody else's words that may not be properly translated by your brain. You have to go deep inside your thought and you have to do it on your own. Nobody can tell you how to do this. You can be told that it's something that you can do. That's what I'm telling you. But I can't give you a magic recipe by which you can completely alter fundamentally your thought and behavior. I've already done it because I figured out how to do it. It's not hard. Don't overthink it too much. Just keep that in mind. And if you're not satisfied with what you are now, how you think, how you live, what you do for a job, how successful you are in whatever realm of life, just keep it in mind, and by reminding yourself of that and by visualizing yourself more as what you wish to be, and realizing that the only reason that you're not that is because of your own self-doubt, feeling entrapped by the rest of the world, and once you realize you can let the rest of the world go and do whatever you want, you'll feel much better, trust me. And I don't mean in a hippie-trippy way of, well, I took so much LSD, man. My life is so much better now. I see that reality is just a fucking mistake by the elder ones. I don't mean that. I mean a deep-seated psychological transformation can take place over time. It's not instant. It can take place over time, over some months or years, that will completely transform the way you live your life. Now, I'm not offering this as like a buy my booklet for $5.99 thing. No, this is on the Occult playlist for a reason. Anyone trying to offer you, and I would never do this, some key to life, how to be successful or whatever, and they're having you pay for it, they're fucking charlatan. They don't know. No, they're trying to be successful by bilking people. That's what they're doing. There's good manipulation, then there's bad manipulation. I try to stick to the former, and I try to aim it generally at myself, because it's more fun. I love the fact that I don't quite live in everybody else's reality. When I'm in the woods, I'm still kind of a wizard walking around out in the woods looking for goblins. Or when I'm walking through the mountains, I kind of think there might be a dragon in that cave over there. It's a much more exciting way to live life. Who fucking cares if it's reality or not? Reality is just a mass consensus. It's no more right than any other reality. I can go around, I can catch a salamander and proclaim it a baby dragon. It's just as accurate as saying it's a salamander, ultimately. If we believe that the universe is just artificial intelligence, or there's some weird cosmic shit going on out there, maybe there is a god, maybe it's like a pantheon, then it doesn't really matter. Reality is just an illusion for the most part. That's about all. Peace out.